Hey, we've got a problem here.
What did you do?
Nothing. I stirred the tanks.
Whoa. Hey.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we have a problem.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and just yesterday, Perch and I discussed CBR.com's article basically stating that the comic industry should kind of do away with floppies and move to a graphic novel only format. Today, he's back on the channel. We're going to talk about another CBR.com article that relates to that, talking about the tremendous success of DC Comics YA graphic novels. How you doing, Perch?
I'm doing okay. I'm hanging in there. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. You know, the quarantine life isn't treating me too bad here, and my hair's getting long, but you know, I'm definitely getting a little rounder. But other than that, I feel like I'm doing all right.
We're all hanging in there.
So in this, I think they make a couple of astute points that are actually very well made, but they don't tie everything in together, and they don't recognize kind of the mistake that I think DC Comics is making. I'm not sure if you'll agree with me. We haven't really obviously talked about this beforehand, but in there they state that DC going to this YA format where these aren't really being released in floppies, although they did mention Superman versus the Klan, which was definitely released in floppies, and I think was a kind of a mistake. I don't think anybody really bought that, but these are written and designed for a young adult audience, and they're being put on the bookshelf next to YA audiences, and they're getting YA authors to write them. They specifically talk about Lauren Miracle's Under the Moon, a Catwoman tale that apparently sold very well. And one of the reasons was because she is a well-known YA artist, and these books were put by her other writings. And I think that is excellent.
Yeah. I mean, I think that so it's an interesting article because it's got a bunch of different facts all sprinkled in here. Some are accurate, and some of the conclusions I agree with you they draw are odd. We'll see if we agree at the end. But yeah, I think DC's strategy, if you look at their YA group, I mean, they're treating it like Elseworlds. They're treating it like an imprint, not like their core comics. So they're preserving both places while they go and explore what they're wanting to do. And then they did get legitimate YA authors, and I think that legitimate is a key word there. They didn't find fringe YA authors or find people who kind of want to dabble in young adult. They found people who had success there, and they brought them in and they had them write in this imprint. So that's a good decision. I think they have had some decent sales with this. The article says sales juggernaut. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but still, it's been a solid seller, and nothing wrong with that.
Yes, and one of the things that DC Comics has done, within the past, I believe 2 years, they put a bigger emphasis on these graphic novels. They've had a big presence, at Book Expo and things like that, to where it's not really about the comic book industry, it's about the book industry, and they're kind of targeting that new audience, which I think is really smart. Because when you see what the strategy that Marvel is doing, they're bringing in YA authors and they're putting them on comic books. And they're trying to bring that YA audience over into the comic shop, which I think is why it isn't working for Marvel, whereas DC's strategy is much more successful.
Yeah, I mean, they're bringing them in to do just mainstream comics, part of their core line. They're not differentiating the two, or they'll do a comic aimed at YA, but it still sits within the same universe. And that's why I think Marvel's strategy is very poor. And the other thing is we've heard people make fun of DC's ads for some of their YA books that they've seen. But the reality is, if you're buying floppies on a regular basis, you're seeing maybe 10%, or maybe 15% of their total advertising for YA books. The majority of DC's spend is going directly at the YA market in those channels. Stuff most comic book readers don't see, and nor should they. The DC is putting their money and their marketing where those books actually get sold to the audience that they're trying to sell to. And that's a much better decision. Marvel just dumps all their marketing dollars into the same place. You do not see the same approach. So that's why DC's being far more successful.
Personally, I do think DC is wasting their time putting these advertisements like in Batman and Superman and stuff. Right. I don't see the audiences transitioning over. I have children. I'm not buying my children these comic books, or I wouldn't buy them because I don't. That's going to be the folly that we're about to talk about. Even though I should be the audience, it should be directed. If it's in there, it should be something that catches my eye, and I say, hey, I want this for my children. But here's the problem, and this is why I think the strategy isn't going to work, is because these YA graphic novels should be an introduction into the character that is more YA friendly, but doesn't deviate so much from the character and the lore of the character that when they grow up and they move beyond the YA audience or the YA graphic novels, that they end up transitioning over into the comic books that are, written for adults.
Yeah, I agree. But I think it's so this is an interesting point. I think that if you think about logically what's going to happen is these kids are going to come in, read these kind of YA books, get their introduction to these characters, maybe for the first time. But because there's a significant disconnect, I mean, the kids will not understand the Elseworlds concept or all this. They won't understand why the cartoon they're seeing is different from the comic they're reading, I think, or the YA book they're reading. I think that's the bigger part where it's going to break down, is most kids will want to see what's on TV, and it's not going to resemble what they just read. And that's going to create a disconnect. If the kids really like what they're reading in the YA book, they're going to want to read more. But if there's not more, and their only option is to hop over to comics that are completely different from what they just consumed, they're not going to do it. And so the wall goes up and it breaks down at that point. Completely agree.
And I think that's one of the reasons Dan Didio kind of got in trouble, was the lack of synergy between the characters, between mediums. There should be a distinct feel for the cartoons. There should be a distinct feel for the YA novels, and there should be a distinct feel for the comic books, but there should be synergy between all these characters so that when that Batman movie or that Superman movie, that entertainment vehicle that's likely to generate upwards of $1 billion and really bring in the money, that you have more people ready to go in there that are familiar with the character, ready to enjoy that, and it's not jarring to them. Because if you go and read Gotham High and then you watch the next Batman movie that comes out, they're not exactly going to be anywhere similar, because that's not where Warner Brothers is taking that character.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a thing as brand protection. I mean, you have to have at least some unity behind your properties and your brand in order to, fully get the amount of money you want to get. You want all these things feeding each other, so you dip into all the different revenue pots. I think, and it's hard to speculate. I suspect that what DC kind of wanted to do, at least on some level, or some people at DC, was to maybe, if this YA stuff really took off, to start to migrate their core line to look more like the YA group books. I suspect there would be this attempt to kind of transition to make that connection. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I think that that's at least where some of the G5 rumors came in, and some other pieces, is that they wanted to unify these just kind of around the back way. But maybe not. Maybe they just thought it's okay to run all these different properties simultaneously with very different takes on the character. Like you said, executives would look at that and go, "You're going for lots of different markets. That's good, but you've lost your brand unity." You look at a company like Disney and how maniacal they are around characters like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. You can't just randomly have a different take on that character. They protect that brand very fiercely. And same thing should be happening here. And I don't know if this relates to why Didio was fired or not, but there's definitely, I think, a problem lurking here if this stuff all takes off.
So just to wrap up the CBR.com article, because I do want to talk about a comment I got on the other video that we just released yesterday. Mm-hmm. There are some good points in here, and I agree with them. DC is doing a smart thing with these YA branded graphic novels. They are marketing them better. They are going into the right place. I don't think they should do the thing where they're releasing Superman versus the Klan into floppies. I think it's a waste of time. They should put all those efforts into putting known YA authors, the ones that they can get, that are willing to come over to the DC brand, and get those on the bookshelves to get eyes on those characters. And I think Marvel, is way behind the 8 ball on that. But like we just said, the brand identity needs to be taken more seriously, and they need to make sure that the characters kind of line up. That way, Batman is generally speaking the same character across all these mediums.
Yeah, there just needs to be a strategy around what you're going to do with your brand. You can do it in many different ways. There just needs to be a strategy there. Maybe one will play out. I mean, honestly, there are good points. There's good things in the CBR article. Almost the goofiest thing is the headline: the DC's YA graphic novels changed the game for big 2 books. I mean, it's not necessarily they're changing the game, because the article is trying to make a point that, hey, this is going to be the centerpiece of all of DC going forward. No, not really. It's just creating another market. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing. Create another market. It doesn't mean you torch the previous market. It means you now have two to make money out of, which is what you should want.
Yeah, my whole point is Gotham High, those versions of the characters are never going to end up in comic books. They're certainly never going to end up on a TV show. They won't end up in a cartoon, most likely, and they certainly won't end up on a movie. So it's kind of a wasted opportunity to garner that new audience for the character. Now, I do want to talk about this comment that I got on the Time to Stop Making Floppy Comics, CBR.com thing, so that we talked about yesterday. I'm going to butcher this name because she's Italian. It's Viviana Decharia. She says, here in Italy, that jump has unfortunately already happened, and no, just no. We used to have floppies of Italian-made comic books for kids once, and they were very popular. You could find them everywhere. Now we only make graphic novels. The market shrunk, not just because of the switch, but now kids don't even know what comics are in Italy. Yeah. And she basically goes on to talk about a lot of the issues as far as money and stuff. And she said that she's a colorist that's worked on 4 volumes of comic books, over 300 pages in total that she's colored, and she's never seen a cent. And this is why I think that CBR's overall take, in which this definitely ties into, they're trying to hammer home the point that we need to move away from floppies, move towards graphic novels, is a folly that it will just shrink the audience and the market overall in the end.
Yeah, that's. I need to go look at that comment. Sounds like a really. First of all, I'm struggling. Never work for free. I did that video. Never work for free. It's a terrible thing. But I feel bad for somebody putting in that much labor and not receiving a cent. That's awful. Yeah, I mean, time and time again, you can look at other regions when they say, "All right, let's just go for books." The market does shrink. It does not blow up. It does not grow. And it makes sense. And it's ties to something Todd McFarlane said in his interview in Forbes about a week ago. If you remove the addiction, or you remove the ability for somebody to consume every week comics, and you stretch that out, a lot of them will just go away. So this idea that if we just blow up floppies and go for pure books, and we release, a book every 6 months, that the entire comic audience is just going to patiently wait and then all go in, buy the book. That won't happen. We know that's not how people consume comics. We know that people like the serialized view of comic stories and what they consume. That's part of the game. If you rip that away, it blows up. And there's a lot of industry pros, I mean, and names you may not expect, people like Eric Larson and others who are also poking at that CBR article. Point is saying, the math just does not support this. And you look at other regions in the world where they've tried that, it doesn't work.
Yeah. So overall, my thoughts are these YA graphic novels are a value add to the brand. They should expand things, but do it logically with, and take the character history, lore, and the plans that they have for the future of the character in a consideration. So this article isn't nearly as dumb as the one we talked about yesterday. It makes some good points, but I think their idea that we can replace the comic book industry with YA graphic novels, and that'll move them on to just graphic novels moving forward. I don't think that's going to work, and there should be more synergy across the brands.
Yeah, I think you need to have a strategy. You need to have an end game. So if this YA audience blows up, people start consuming these books, reading them. Where are they going to go next when they grow up? Are you assuming they're just going to hop over to comics? Are you assuming they're going to go to your movies? Where are they going? Where's this audience that you've gathered going? Or are you just going to let them go? Or do you plan on writing these books forever? Are you going to have Gotham High 2 through 80, and you're going to just try and transition to an older audience? So just what is your strategy? And I'm not saying they don't have one. Hopefully they do, but that is something you have to think over. You can't just create this market, have it be entirely separate, and then hope people stick around. They won't. Mm-hmm.
Well, I imagine at&t and Warner Brothers strategy is to get as many people into movie theaters to see these DC related films and have something similar to the MCU. Moving forward, and when you have people that read graphic novels that they love, when a movie comes out and they know that it's based on what they just read, or there's something about it that's going to be in there, what do they do with that? They talk to their friends and they talk about how great it is, and you get great word of mouth. And I think that's one of the reasons that the MCU was able to blow up so much, whereas the DC universe didn't quite blow up because they used more of a dark version of the universe that wasn't really true to what DC is.
Yeah. No, I think so. I mean, I think AT&T has and Time Warner have to be thinking about, we want these brands to be omnipresent. We want people to think about Batman, and we want to be able to have them go everywhere to get Batman. Movies, books, shows, things for kids, things for adults. It's you get hooked on Batman. You're like, I got to buy that streaming service because Batman's going to be on it. They just want that kind of presence for their properties. And the acquisition of DC was, as we talked about before, was great for them because it gave them a ton of brands that they can do that with. But, you know, as they open up these new markets, they've got to have a way for people to transition from one to the other as they grow up or what have you.
Couldn't agree more, Perch. I appreciate the conversation. I think I think everyone's going to enjoy it. Please definitely let us know your thoughts in the comments section. We like to debate this stuff. If you have a different take, let Perch and I know, and we will get back to you. We especially like it when people disagree with us. Especially if you have good points and you make them very well, we'll definitely engage with you and talk with you about that. Do you have anything else to say before we wrap this up?
Nope. Just thanks for the conversation. Always good talking with you.
All right. Later, buddy.
Take care.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.